I'm going to do a reading of Henry Miller. And I'd like to introduce this by saying that, Henry Miller has been an influence on me for a while. But I'll keep the introduction to be short anyways, but I've also, there's certain influences on me. Another influence is Deleuze and Guattari. And in the Anti-Oedipus, they talk about Henry Miller quite a bit. And Deleuze and Guattari is sort of like difficult territory, and I'm not even finished reading Anti-Oedipus, and I'm just thinking, over the course of many years, I've been kind of trying to get through their material, but I feel like I've been whatever. They're an influence, and I find it easier rather than getting bogged down in the complicated bits of that is to have it be a subtle implicit influence rather than an explicit influence a lot of the time. But what's interesting is that I was kept this nagging thing about using Deleuzian ideas with astrology, and that by reading some Henry Miller again, I'm starting to see this sort of like connection point where Henry Miller is a kind of like the nexus where you can bring in Deleuze and you can bring in astrology and you can have all these intermingling things, and it's at least a different direction to take it. Or I don't know, or is there any other astrologers who are talking this much about Henry Miller? I don't know, but I'm gonna just read a little bit of Henry Miller for my astrology channel now. And this one is called Benno, the Wild Man from Borneo. Benno has always reminded me of a Sandwich Islander. Not only that his hair is by turns straight and kinky, not only that he rolls his eyes in delirious wrath, not only that he is gaunt and cannibalistic, positively ferocious when his breadbasket is empty, but that he is also gentle and peaceful as a dove, calm, placid, cool as a volcanic lake. He says he was born in the heart of London, of Russian parents, but that is a myth he has invented to conceal his truly fabulous origin. Anyone who has ever skirted an archipelago knows the uncanny faculty which the islands have appearing and disappearing. Unlike the mirages of the desert, these mysterious islands do truly disappear from sight, do truly bob up from the unknown depths of the sea. Benno is very much like that. He inhabits an archipelago of his own, in which there are these mysterious apparitions and disparitions. Nobody has ever explored Benno with any thoroughness. He's elusive, slippery, treacherous, volatile, uncanny. Sometimes he is a mountain peak covered with bright snow. Sometimes he is a broad glacial lake. Sometimes a volcano spouting fire and brimstone. Sometimes he rolls quietly down to the ocean front and lies there like a big white Easter egg, waiting to be dipped and packed away in a softly padded basket. And sometimes he gives the impression of one who was not born of a mother's womb, but of a monster who picked his way out of a hard-boiled egg. If you examine him closely, you will see that he has rudimentary claws like a mock turtle, that he has spurs like the clover cock. And if you examine very closely, you will discover that, like the dodo bird, he carries a harmonica in his right tubercle. At an early age, a very early age, he found himself living in the lonely, desperate life of a river pirate on the little island off of Hell Gate. Nearby was an ancient whirlpool, such as Homer speaks of in the Carthaginian version of the Odyssey. Here he perfected himself in that culinary art, which was to stand him in good stead during his uninterrupted privations. Here he acquired a knowledge of Chinese, Turkestani, Kurd, and the less well-known dialects of Upper Rhodesia. Here he learned to write in that hand which only the prophets of the desert have mastered, an illegible hand which is nevertheless intelligible to students of esoteric lore. He, too, gleaned an inkling of those strange runic patterns which he later to employ in his pink and orange gouaches, his linoleum fretworks, his arboreal hallucinations. He studied the seed and the ovum, the unicellular life of animalculae, which daily filled his lobster pots. Here the mystery of the egg first engrossed him. Not only its shape and balance, but its logic, its ordained irreversibility. Over and over again the egg crops up, sometimes in a china blue dream, sometimes counterpointed against the tripod, sometimes chipped and nascent. Exhausted by ceaseless exploration and investigation, Benno is forever returning to the source and fundament, the center of his own and vital creation. The egg. Always it is an Easter egg, which is to say a holy egg. Always the lost racial egg, the seed of pride and strength, which has perdured since the destruction of the holy temple. When there is nothing left but despair, Benno curls up inside his holy egg and goes to sleep. He sleeps the long, schizophrenic sleep of winter season. It is more congenial than running about looking for sirloin steaks and chopped onions. When he gets unbearingly hungry, he will eat his egg, and then for a time he sleeps anywhere. Often right outside the Closerie des Lilas, beside the statue erected in the memory of Marshal Ney. These are the Waterloo sleeps, so to speak, when all is rain and mud. The Blucher never appears. When the sun comes out, Benno appears again, alive, chipper, perky, sardonic, irritable, buzzing, questioning, dubious, querulous, suspicious, effervescent, and always in blue overalls and sleeves rolled up, always with a quid of tobacco in the corner of his mouth. By sundown, he has made a dozen new canvases, large and small. Whereupon it is a question of space, of frames, of nails, of thumbtacks. These cobwebs are shaken down, the floor washed, the ladder removed. The bed is left stranded in the middle air. The lice make merry, the cowbells ring. Nothing to do but stroll out to Park Montsouris. Here, the denuded flesh and raiment, deserted by humankind, Benno studies the tom tit and the armadillo, makes note of the weathercocks, tests the sand and gravel which the kidneys are constantly throwing out. With Benno, it is always a feast or a famine. Either he is loading crushed rock on the Hudson, or he is painting the side of a house. He is a dynamo, a gravel crusher, a lawnmower, an 8-day clock, and all in one. No, then he lies up for repairs. The barnacles are scraped off and the seams dried and caulked. Sometimes a new poop deck is installed. You look at his progeny, and it is Easter Island by the Count Potocky de Montauk. New landmarks, new monuments, new relics, all slithering in a camembert green light which comes up out of the bulrushes. Here he is, Benno, sitting in the midst of his archipelago, and his eggs running about like mad. Only the new eggs this time, with new equilibrium, all frolicking on the greensward. Benno, fat and lazy, lolls in the sun with gravy running down his chops. He reads the last year's newspapers to while away the time. He invents new dishes made of seaweed and scallops, or failing scallops, mountain oysters, all with a dash of Worcestershire sauce and fried parsley. In such moments he loves everything that is succulent and bursting with juice. He tears the bones apart and growls like a contented wolf. He ruts. As I say, all to conceal his fabulous origin. To conceal his monstrous birth, Benno goes about smooth of tongue, sleek as a puma, after the rains. Talking now of this thing and now of that. Inside him there is an unholy abracadabra fermenting. Strange Equations form queer plant-like growths, fungus, toadstools, marshmallow, poison ivy, the mandrake, the eucalyptus, all forming inside him in the hollow of the entrails of a sort of wild linoleum pattern which the Buryan will trace when he comes out of his trance. There are 9 different cities buried beneath his midriff. The middle one is Samarkand, and where he has his rendezvous once with death, he has passed through the glazing process which left the middle layers smooth and mirror-like. Here, he is in utter desperation. He strolls among the stalagmites and stalactites, cool as a knife and garnished with mulberry leaves. Here he sees himself ever young, the Swiss family Robinson Killjoy, the gloomy Gus who played by Hell's Gate's shores. Here the nostalgic odors are revived. The smell of the mud crab and the sea turtle, all the tender little delicacies of the old island life when his palate was being formed. Like the bed louse and the amaranthus, Benno makes progress in all directions at once. At 12, he was a virtuoso. At 60, he will be fresh and dandy, a bright young bantam with red comb and featherweight gloves, to say nothing of the spurs. Circular dips like the Leviathan to snooze on the ocean floor, or like the sea cow, he will come up to graze along the Labrador coast. Now and then he flies from wall to wall with the close-clipped wings which he invents during hibernation. Occasionally he grows a coat of fast merino wool fresh from the Obermeergau region. In his right moments he trusts nobody. He was born with the evil eye, the acetylene torch planted in the middle of his forehead. When he is restive, he champs and paws at the bit. When he is full of oats, he kicks up his heels. When he's angry, he snorts fire. Usually he is gentle and placid, still as the Hibernian in his fen. He loves the green meadows and the high hills, the kites soaring over Suchow, the gibbet, and the rack. He loves the leather-heeled coolies, the oyster pirates, the wardens of Dannemora, and the patient carpenter with his adze and foot rule. Trigonometry he loves also, and the intricate flights of the homing pigeon, or the fortifications of the Dardanelles. He loves everything and is complicated in rule and logarithm or spiced with fiery tinctures. He loves the styptic poisons, the triple bromides, touch of carborundum, and a glaze of mercurochrome. He loves the tight and the space, as well as champagne and oysters. But best of all, he loves a rumpus, because when the wild man of Borneo comes out and the sky is full of prickly heat, in anger he will bite his own tail or bray like the donkey. In anger, he is apt to cut off his own fetlocks. In anger, he comes up out of the groin like jets of prussic acid. It puts a clean coat of varnish over his work, his loves, his friendships. It is the heraldic emblem, the tarantula, which you will find embroidered on all his nightshirts, on his socks, and even his cuff buttons. Bright feathery anger, which he wears like a plume. It becomes him like an emolument or an emulsion. Such is the Benno, as I have always known him and found him to be. A sturdy cutlass with a pennabosket and a swagger gait of cabarello. He will go far unless he is cut down by the sword. He belongs to the Inky Peninsulas, the open waterways, the Culebra cuts. Like the squid, he has no known origin, stemming rather from pride and arrogance, from aqueous depths and clabby footholds. He marks off his own precincts and defends his terrain like a saber-toothed tiger. He adopts the protective coloration of the zebra. And if necessary, he can lie in the tall grass for aeons of time. Basically, he is volcanic ash. Immiscible in water, incorruptible, and slow to rust. He is of the old line of Pelagians, the ridge runners, who have traveled over the sunken Andes to find a Mexican world. He is tough as an old turkey. but warm-hearted and inhumanly tender. A sort of wild man from Borneo with certain heating, spring mattress, casters, and a boomerang in his left hand. And so basically, to sum up, that's Henry Miller, the wild man from Borneo. And my take is that, or sorry, Benno, the Wild Man from Borneo by Henry Miller. And this is like, if you want to get Deleuze and Guattari's Anti-Oedipus in 15 minutes, here it is basically.